The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
This is Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Montgomery Mosaic features topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. Here now is your host, Deborah Milo.
Good morning, County friends. Welcome to another Montgomery Mosaic. As a county citizen, how much do you know about the role of the County Council? Montgomery County residents are very much a part of the Council's decision-making process, whether the decision is a new law, a master plan, or the budget. You know, your participation and input are vital to the Council as they consider views received at public hearings. Well, today I have the pleasure of talking with County Council President George Leventhal. Council President George Leventhal is serving his fourth term as an at-large member of the Montgomery County Council. He chairs the Council's Health and Human Services Committee and also serves on the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee. George, welcome so much to Montgomery Mosaic. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Deborah. It's nice to be here.
If you would you mind sharing with our listeners a little bit about yourself, such as where you grew up and how you came to have a career in public service?
Well, thanks. I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland. I'm 52 years old, and 42 years of my life I've lived in Montgomery County. So I know the place pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm starting to figure out how to get around. And I remember Montgomery County when it was when there were more farms than there are today. I remember when the most exotic meal you could get in Bethesda was a plate of French fries at the hot shops. So we've changed a lot, and I think we've changed for the better. We're an exciting, dynamic, international community now. And we have it all here in Montgomery County. We have exciting, thriving, urban areas with nightlife and shopping and dining out. And we have quiet, safe, desirable, single-family, residential, suburban neighborhoods. And we also have more farmland preserved than any other county in the entire United States. Out of more than 2,300 counties, the Natural Resources Defense Council awarded Montgomery County the best farmland protection program in the entire United States, right at the doorstep of Washington, D.C.
That's amazing, and I love to hear that because it lets us know that we have the best of both worlds. Well, let's begin by talking a little bit about the County Executive's FY16 operating budget proposal. What can county residents expect, and will there be many changes?
The County Council always does make changes to the County Executive's budget. Under the county charter, we have the right to add or subtract or move things around. We're not restricted in any way. However, the county executive consults closely with his department heads, and so his budget blueprint, which we receive every year in the middle of March, does tend to closely resemble the final outcome. 95% or so of what the county executive recommends usually does end up resembling the final budget. There are some things that we will probably add. There are some priorities of ours that will need to be addressed. But for the most part, we'll stay within the broad outlines. And in particular, I believe this year there will not be a property tax increase above the limit in the county charter. County Executive Leggett and I were in close contact as he was putting this budget together. It's a tight budget, and we have a lot of needs, and our revenues are just keeping up with our needs. And County Executive Leggett was thinking a tax increase might be necessary this year, but he did not ultimately propose one, which is good news from my perspective.
Oh, yeah.
If he had sent over a tax increase, it would require under the county charter a unanimous vote of 9 council members to increase property taxes above the inflation formula. And I think that would have been very difficult to get. I don't know that all 9 of my colleagues or that even I would have voted for a property tax increase above that inflation limit. So I'm glad we're staying within that limit, and I think we'll have a very amicable and collegial discussion with the county executive's many department heads. This is probably the most important responsibility that we have on the county council, is to adopt the spending plan which reflects our priorities and our values.
Absolutely. And needless to say that the piece about not increasing the property taxes, did you hear the broad yay and applause that you heard in the audience?
I hope so. I will tell you that within the school establishment, school system employees, school system administrators, they would like a big tax increase. They've been asking us for one. And there is concern. We have many, many unmet needs in our school system. I think the county executive did a good job of meeting those needs. The county executive recommends about 97% of what the school board asked us for. And our state senators and state delegates have done a tremendous job bringing money home from Annapolis, so that even though Governor Hogan's budget would have meant about a $25 million reduction to what we believed we were entitled to in the state education formulas, as it looks now, the legislature is still not finished, but it looks as though we will get all of the funding that we were entitled to under those state formulas, including the Geographic Cost of Education Index. So it looks like we're going to get back that $25 million that we were afraid we would lose under Governor Hogan's budget. So it's looking brighter for the school system, but there still are unmet needs in the school system. There still are students who need a lot of extra attention, and the county council's very much aware of those needs.
Of course. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the types of important issues that you've championed in the past, and I know that you're passionate about the environment and sustainability. I seem to remember reading you authored some legislation that would place restrictions on the use of toxic lawn chemicals and other issues, including the Clean Energy Awards program, green building legislation, and the biodiesel task force. Talk a bit about your passion for the environment.
Thank you very much for asking. Our aspiration is that Montgomery County will be the cleanest, healthiest, safest jurisdiction in America. And we are using the power of local government to address environmental protection, because it is our belief, especially with Congress so dysfunctional and so riven by partisan disagreement and frankly so beholden to large special interests, chemical companies and the oil industry and other corporate special interests, that federal regulation of our environment is really falling behind, even under the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. The EPA, the FDA, other federal agencies are afraid of their own shadow. They're afraid that if they rigorously enforce federal law, that they will get an enormous pushback from Congress. Regulations are delayed for years. I'll give you just one example. In 2010, the county council passed a law that requires when you go to a chain restaurant in Montgomery County, in 2011, that you will find on the menu the calories in each menu item. Now, that's actually a requirement of federal law. It's actually included in the Affordable Care Act, which was Obamacare.
Right.
But even today, the FDA, now it's 4 years later, has yet to issue the regulations telling restaurants how to comply, whereas in Montgomery County, we've been doing it since 2012.
Right.
So this is overwhelmingly popular with consumers. When consumers go into a Starbucks or an Olive Garden or any chain restaurant, and they can make wise choices based on the content of the meal. Overwhelmingly, I get good feedback for this. Well, this is an example of where local government acted to protect public health because the federal government is simply moving too slowly, even though it's already federal law. This is supposed to be law in all 50 states. So we've done that in Montgomery County. So with respect to toxic chemicals, which just the other day the World Health Organization identified Roundup, glyphosate, as a probable carcinogen, and yet EPA allows it to be legally used. And so what we're going to say is that chemicals that are probable carcinogens should not be used by homeowners on their grass, because you can maintain a green, healthy lawn. The best way to maintain a green, healthy lawn is frequent seeding and mowing.
That's right.
It is not necessary to use these chemicals, most of which weren't even on sale before World War II. And certainly people had lush, green, healthy lawns prior to the 1940s.
Oh, of course.
So we can do this. It's a gentle law. There's not going to be lawn police, fining people huge amounts of money. That's not happening.
Right.
What it reminds me of is 20 years ago, we adopted a recycling mandate, and now we have extraordinarily high compliance from homeowners in terms of separating their waste streams, because recycling is the right thing to do. 20 years ago, when the government said you must recycle, there was the same kind of debate. Oh, you're going to have the garbage police, and if I put a glass jar in the wrong container, the county's going to come down on my head. That didn't happen.
No.
But now Montgomery County residents know that you put your recyclables in one container, you put your food in a compost container if that's a feasible option for you, you put your trash in the trash container. People are accustomed to that, and they're proud of it. And I believe that over time we will have healthy, sane practices for maintaining our land that do not affect children, pets, and the Chesapeake Bay by exposing them to toxic chemicals and hazards. I hear from so many dog owners whose dogs have gotten cancer. And there's a strong belief, and there's papers that show that this is the case, that there's a correlation between dogs running around in grass that's been treated with these toxic chemicals and cancer in dogs. Now, dogs don't read warning labels.
That's right.
And little children don't read warning labels. So when the EPA says, as long as you comply as directed, and as long as you follow the label, and as long as you comply with posted notices, then you won't be exposed to these killer chemicals. But little children and dogs can't be expected to comply with instructions. And the reality is that you don't need to use toxic chemicals to maintain a very attractive and healthy lawn. And when you do use those chemicals, you're not only exposing your own family and your own animals, but you're exposing next-door neighbors and other animals to risks. And the risks are documented and verifiable.
Not to mention all of the wildlife, the beauty that surrounds us. You know, it's something we can't take for granted, to say the least. If you've just tuned in, it's Deborah Milo on Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL. And today I'm talking with Montgomery County Council President George Leventhal. George and I were talking a little bit about the environment, about his passion about environment and saving the environment and sustainability. George, how about the bill that you sponsored that passed that bans the use of styrofoam?
So Councilmember Hans Reamer, my friend and colleague, was the lead sponsor. I was one of the co-sponsors. And again, this is another example of local government acting to protect public health and safety and the environment in the absence of action from the federal government. In the Pacific Ocean, there are gigantic plastic and polystyrene dead zones, huge islands of trash that are many of them involve toxic chemicals. They affect marine life. They affect the growth of plants, which marine life feed on. It's a hazard. And virtually any waterway that you look at, you're going to see these polystyrene pellets and little tiny pieces of polystyrene. They never biodegrade.
That's right.
We've had there's an organization called Trash Free Maryland who has been doing frequent testing of the water in Chesapeake Bay and the water in the various streams and creeks that feed Chesapeake Bay. And you look at the water that they pull. I mean, it turns your stomach. It's just full of these nasty little polystyrene pellets. And as with the lawn chemicals, they aren't necessary. Look, one of the world's largest restaurant corporations, McDonald's, no longer uses polystyrene containers. They're very
That's
profitable.
right.
And they've found that by using recycled cardboard and paper to package their food, that they can get along just fine, that it maintains the appropriate temperature, and customers are happy with it. So if McDonald's can stop using polystyrene and still make a ton of money, then other private sector actors will be just fine.
That's right.
This polystyrene ban actually was not terribly controversial. And I think that the lawn chemical thing is very controversial. The lawn care industry is fighting it hard, and the chemical industry, they're fighting it hard. But in all of these cases, I think that what we're doing is overwhelmingly popular with the public. I believe that the Montgomery County public wants our environment to be clean and healthy and wants to see action at the local level within reason, in an affordable way.
Right.
I mentioned earlier, we're not raising taxes above the charter limit this year. People want to see a government that works. And what is part of a government that works is active protection of public health and safety, including at the local level. And I'm proud of my leadership in that area.
Absolutely. We're proud of your leadership in that area as well. Among your many initiatives and programs, you're also chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee, which supports and oversees programs for the county's neediest residents. Can you share with our listeners about some of the programs you've created to address the concerns for this population, such as Montgomery Cares?
Early on in my time as an elected official, years before the enactment of the Affordable Care Act, I asked the question, what would it take to provide access to health care for every resident of Montgomery County, no matter whether his or her job provides access to health benefits? And so we created the Montgomery Cares program, which is a network of community-based clinics. There are more than a dozen of them now that provide care to patients who seek it in their own language. We have Spanish-speaking clinics, Korean-speaking clinics, Chinese-speaking clinics, Urdu-speaking clinics, to meet the very diverse population base that we have here in Montgomery County. We have more foreign-born residents in Montgomery County than any other jurisdiction in Maryland. That's a great strength. Many people immigrate here with tremendous talent and resources and capability, but it also brings substantial needs. Some component of our immigrant population does not have access to health benefits. The clinics don't only provide care to immigrants, of course, but we are culturally competent, and so several of them do provide care in multiple languages. So we're very proud of that program. The good news is that we are seeing fewer patients now since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act and the availability of the health exchanges and expanded Medicaid coverage. That's a good thing. We want to see fewer people seeking care from the county because more people are getting access to care through the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of Medicaid. So it's headed in the right direction, but there still is a need for these county-supported clinics, and I'm very proud of our efforts in that regard.
That's the beauty of our county, is the rich tapestry of diversity. I mean, that's something that just, you have so many people bringing so many wonderful things and talents to the county. We do need to be able to meet those needs. You're right about that, George. I agree.
It's a great thing to be proud of. It makes it exciting and interesting to live here, but it also does bring demands, certainly on our school system. You have a lot of students for whom English is not their first language.
That's right.
And that brings, costs.
Challenges, but still good things. Well, we're going to take a quick break and come back to Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL. Stay tuned, folks. I'm talking to George Leventhal, County Council President. See you soon.
State is brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council. On Connecticut Avenue, just before you leave the district, past Military Road Northwest, it was an accident just reported, so look out for police looking for that now. Accident Illinois Avenue Northwest at Emerson Street, 295 southbound, slowing from Burroughs Avenue down to East Capitol Street, and Riggs Road, still blocked at Ruetan Street because of the ongoing utility work. As a parent, you can't help but dream about what the future holds for your child, but consider this: the odds that your child will be diagnosed with autism are 1 in 68. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by Unbound. For today, showers off and on, highs in the 50s. Tonight, a little bit of rain left over, down to about 50 for a low. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy day and a high once again in the 50s. Mothers around the world have the power to lift their families out of poverty. They just need a little help. Make a difference in the life of a family today at unbound.org. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL, where information is power.
County friends, welcome back. This is Deborah Milo on Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL. And I've had the privilege of talking to Montgomery County Council President George Leventhal. We were talking about a number of things, kind of doing some touch points here, but I wanted to shift gears for a minute, and I wanted to talk a little bit, George, about the upcoming Faith Community Town Hall meeting. I think it's scheduled for sometime in June. What does the council hope to accomplish with this event?
You know, as much as I try to hear from my constituents and understand what's on their minds, people will always be more frank with their pastor than with their politician.
That's true.
If you want to know what's going on in a community, talk to the clergy. If you want to know where your constituents are, they're in the temples and the synagogues and the mosques and the churches.
That's right.
Throughout this great county. And one of the great privileges that I've had as an elected official is to visit the many, many different houses of worship and understand the many different faith traditions. Just a great education,
oh, yes.
You know, in world history and world culture without ever leaving Montgomery County.
That's right.
And so I have deep respect for clergy and faith leaders. And I was council president before in 2006, and we did this. We haven't done it since, and now that I'm in my second tour of duty as council president, we're inviting clergy and faith leaders from every worship tradition to join us on June 10th at the Montgomery County Council office building and just tell us what's on their minds and what they're hearing from their congregants and what are the issues that they think local government ought to be responding to.
Oh, that's amazing. June 10th. Okay, June 10th. Right there at the County Council building?
At the County Council office building, 7:30 in the evening. Okay,
7:30 in the evening on June 10th. I'm going to shift gears again. Let's talk a bit about your support for improving the transportation infrastructure, the Purple Line, Corridor Cities Transitway, and Rapid Bus Transit.
You know, we have so much going for us here in Montgomery County. We're the home of the National Institutes of Health. We're the home of the Food and Drug Administration. We have a well-educated, highly skilled workforce. We're so successful that we have a lot of traffic. We have a lot of people in their cars getting from their home to their work. That's a good thing. There are communities that would love to have our traffic. But when you're sitting in it and you're getting late for an appointment, you don't feel like it's a good thing.
True.
And so we have a metro system that is inadequate to meet the need. The metro system was designed in the 1970s to bring people from their homes in the suburbs to their jobs in the District of Columbia. And so the Red Line serves Montgomery County, but it only runs from north to south. So that if you come from Glenmont down to Union Station or Farragut North, or you come from Shady Grove down to downtown D.C., and your job is in downtown D.C., then maybe Metro meets your needs. But what we need now is we need east-west transit connections. An increasing number of people, a majority of workers in Montgomery County, live in Montgomery County and work in Montgomery County. But we don't have a transit network other than ride-on buses, which are inadequate also, that gives people a choice where if they choose to do so, they can leave their automobile at home and, you know, read the paper and just relax and ride transit to get to work. The Purple Line is ready to go. It's shovel ready. It will be approved by the federal government. We know the right-of-way. We know what it will cost, and we know how it will be paid for. It will carry ultimately 65,000 trips per day. It will take cars off the road. And for those who are still on the road, if you want to drive your automobile, fine, you still benefit when other people ride transit because their cars aren't in your way. So everyone should support an expansion of public transit. The purple line is the farthest along in terms of our planning, and as I say, we know how much it costs, and we know how we'll pay for it. The next priority is called the Corridor Cities Transitway, which would be a rapid bus line which would start at Shady Grove Metro and go north and west. So it would serve communities in Gaithersburg, in Washington Grove, in Germantown, and ultimately all the way out to Clarksburg, and maybe someday further out into Frederick County. That's a longer-term proposition. We have an idea of how much it costs. We don't yet know how we will pay for it. So there's been quite a bit of planning done. The right-of-way has been reserved, but the Corridor Cities Transitway is not quite as far along as the Purple Line. Now, Governor Hogan, we have a new governor, and we wish him well, and we want to work with him, and we are hoping that he will continue the progress that's been made on the Purple Line. He's tasked his Secretary of Transportation, Pete Ron, to find a way to make the Purple Line cost less. If they can do that, good luck to them.
Great.
But regardless, we need this transitway. It is vitally important to economic development throughout the D.C. region. Montgomery and Prince George's counties are working very closely together. It is our top priority. It will be transformative for the University of Maryland, for students, for faculty, for people who just want to attend a Terps game, a basketball game, or football game. The access to the Purple Line is just going to be a tremendous advantage for the entire region. It's going to grow jobs. It's going to improve land values. It's going to provide economic development opportunities. We need this, and it will connect the red line and the green line and the orange line and the blue line and Amtrak, and it will make the entire metro system much more active, interoperable, and it will bring new riders and new revenue into our metro system. So it's really a win-win for everyone, and I'm optimistic that Governor Hogan will see the light. He was skeptical of the project during his campaign, but now he's governor, and now he's got to govern the entire state, and this is a great project for the entire state.
And he has a chance to see the landscape as a whole now. You know, an issue you were talking about, all of the potential jobs. You know, that's the issue that's basically been getting a lot of attention for the past few years, is creating more jobs here in the county. So tell our listeners about initiatives you currently support for the workforce development, such as creating more jobs in the county.
Workforce development is a big topic this year. We have a disconnect where we have a significant number of employees who are looking for work and having trouble finding it, and we have a significant number of employers who are looking for workers and having trouble finding them. How do we bring these two groups together? We need to play a very active role working with the agencies, including our Department of Economic Development, Montgomery College, the universities at Shady Grove, our school system, and the private sector, employers, to listen to employers and understand where the needs are in our workforce and identify workers who can be trained and equipped to do those jobs of the 21st century. And this year, I promised during my presidency, we will identify a lead agency in charge of workforce development. It's been a little bit diffuse among the different agencies. We need one agency who will make the plan, who will convene meetings between employers and the training agencies and identify the workers and plug them into the workforce. I'm optimistic that we can make progress on that this year. It's a very high priority for Mr. Leggett and the County Council.
County listeners, if you're just tuning in to this segment of Montgomery Mosaic, it's your host, Deborah Milo, having a great conversation with County Council President George Leventhal. We're talking about a bevy of ideas and wonderful things going on in here in the county, so I hope you tune in. George, I wanted to go back for a minute, if you don't mind. Talk a little bit about the recent regional summit on homelessness and about how the collaborative efforts of the county, such as Montgomery, Prince George, and the District of Columbia, are going to aid in reducing the number of homeless people and families here in the region, because that's a big concern for a lot of us. I know a lot of us work within our various organizations and synagogues and churches and places of worship to help that issue. Talk a little bit about that, the recent summit.
Well, we've had good news here in Montgomery County in recent years in reducing the prevalence of homelessness. We brought, every year in January, we go out and literally count homeless individuals in shelters, in bus stations, on the street, in the woods. We send out hundreds of volunteers once a year for the one-day point-in-time count of homelessness. And what that census of homeless people has shown is that in the last 3 years, we've achieved a substantial reduction in the homeless people counted on that day. Over the last 3 years, from about 1,100 homeless suffering individuals to under 900. So we're making progress in the right direction. Last year, we mobilized an enormous community effort to not during the January point-in-time count, but in November, to send another team of hundreds of volunteers out to survey homeless people, identify their situations, their needs, and house them and rank them in terms of vulnerability and urgency and emergency, and identify those clients who literally are at risk of dying on the street.
That's right.
We've housed several dozen people who we had prioritized, who we identified during the 100,000 Homes campaign. And that's an approach that the District of Columbia has also used. And we're working very closely with Prince George's County also, because homelessness may travel across county or city jurisdictional borders. Mayor Muriel Bowser met recently with County Executive Ike Leggett and County Executive Rashawn Baker. I was invited to kick the meeting off because I've done a great deal of work on this issue of homelessness. And they agreed to a compact that the three jurisdictions will work together, will share data on individual clients, and will assist in prioritizing housing opportunities, so that if someone is homeless in the District of Columbia and an apartment is available in Montgomery or Prince George's County, or vice versa, we have a homeless person in Montgomery, we want to house that individual in Montgomery, but it would also work to house that individual in Prince George's or D.C. So there's lots of opportunities to keep working towards a continued reduction in the prevalence of this very unfortunate condition and relieving the misery that these very unfortunate clients suffer every day.
Now, does the Health and Human Services Committee, will that help to support that initiative?
The Health and Human Services Committee oversees the Health and Human Services Department, which has the lead for special needs housing and homeless programs.
Good.
We also work closely with our Department of Housing and Community Affairs and our Housing Opportunities Commission. We also work with the Police Department. We work with the Corrections Department. I introduced legislation, and I'm now serving on a new interagency commission on homelessness in Montgomery County, which for the first time brings together all of the agencies, the planning department, the school system, local governments, Gaithersburg, Rockville, Tacoma Park, who are concerned about the issue of homelessness, where we can share information at the very senior level within these departments. This is a best practice model from states and cities throughout the United States that have these interagency commissions. We didn't have one in Montgomery County until I created it just a few months ago. I'm happy to serve on it, and we're going to continue our efforts to identify clients who need help, whether they are single individuals or families. The circumstances are somewhat different. With single individuals, you find that the causes of homelessness are basically rooted mostly in mental illness and substance abuse. With families, sadly, you find high incidence of domestic violence and also human trafficking. You have young people, sadly, who are homeless and who end up being abused and exploited. So it's a very, very serious issue, and we want to bring all the resources of local government to bear and meet the needs of people who need the most help from government.
It sounds to me, George, like you've got everybody hands on deck. Before we wrap up, can you talk a little bit about, or give some words of wisdom that you can share with our listeners about the importance of being active citizen and engaging with the county?
Well, Montgomery County Council members, and I think all elected officials, respond to the people we see and hear. We try to keep in mind everybody's interests, but this is a big county. It's 1 million people.
That's right.
And, you know, if I've seen you recently, then your concerns are on my mind. I just met you. I just saw you. So I strongly encourage my constituents, if they want county government to be responsive, show up, attend hearings, send us email, call my office, set up a visit. I'm very accessible. My office phone is 240-777-7811. All of my colleagues feel the same way. We want to meet you. We want to get to know you. We want to hear how we can provide a government that works, a government that solves problems, a government that gets things done.
Folks, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank my guest, Montgomery County Council President George Leventhal, for joining me today. And thank you, listening friends, for sharing a part of your day with us. Tune in again next month on the second and fourth Wednesday at the same time for another Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Till next time, make it a positive day.
You've been listening to Montgomery Mosaic, featuring topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. For more information or a copy of the show, email publicinformation@montgomerymd.gov or call 240-777-6507. Be sure to tune in at this time on the second and fourth Wednesday every month for Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL. WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com.